Pokemon has evolved a lot over time. While stuff like gyms and new Pokemon have stayed the same, there have been tons of new ideas put into the games to keep them fresh and exciting. What we're looking at today is all the new stuff Game Freak gave us, so we'd come back with each new installment. Many new additions were also expansions or reimagining of old mechanics, such as the different iterations of the Safari Zone. So for those, I'm gonna lump them into one spot on the list and rate them as a whole. So without further ado, let's begin. Number 61. The e-reader. The e-reader was an external card reader that plugged into your Game Boy and could scan special cards to unlock bonus content in games. It was discontinued before I even got a chance to get one. Probably could have been cool, but ultimately way too much to invest in for not that great of a reward. Number 60. The Pokemon Dream World. Nintendo has thrived over the years by trying out weird and wacky gimmicks to set themselves apart from their competition. They're also notorious for their horrible online services. So imagine what using a Pokemon web browser game was like in the year 2010. Pokemon Dream World was the same idea as the Pokewalker or the Pokeball Plus, except instead of sending a Pokemon to a pedometer, you send it to a website that never worked. When the Dream World wasn't undergoing maintenance, you'd be given a single hour to use it before you were kicked off and had to wait 20 more hours. I'm not kidding. They literally made you wait 20 hours before you could log in again. I will say that as a young adolescent, I actually enjoyed the Dream World at the time personally, but I'm still putting it where it belongs, at the bottom of this list. Number 59. Mythical Pokemon. The bane of every Pokemon fan's existence. Back in 1998, we were told to catch 'em all, but what they didn't tell us is that there would be 22 Pokemon we would have to catch in real life. Okay, not literally, but like, we would have to venture into uncharted wilderness and brave countless trials just for a rare Pokemon. Who would do this willingly? Starting with Mew, every generation would see more and more event-exclusive Pokemon that you could only receive in person for a limited time. And if you missed that short window, you'd have to wait years before another distribution was announced. And to make matters worse, some distributions were exclusive to regions like Japan. So if you really wanted that specific event, tough luck, kid. Number 58. Motion controls. No. Number 57. Pokemon-Amie, refresh, and camping. What is this? Tamagotchi? Number 56. Affection. This is just another version of friendship that you raise through Pokemon-Amie in Gen 6 and Pokemon Refresh in Gen 7. Raising it enough will give you benefits in battle such as dodging attacks or gaining more experience than normal. It's also how you originally evolved Eevee into Sylveon. Gen 8 just combined this into friendship like how it should have been all along. Number 55. O powers and Rotom powers. Similar to affection, these powers just give you more ways of making these games easier. With O powers, you're really only given them by this creepy guy meeting you in various spots around Kalos. But Rotom powers, absolute nightmare. It's bad enough Sun and Moon stopped you every 10 steps for a cutscene, but now I got my Pokedex doing it too? The Rotom decks in the Sun and Moon games would give you a Rotom power through a slot machine minigame like every 5 minutes. Leave me alone. Number 54. Gems. Gems were sort of like a precursor to Z-moves and terastallization. Look, they even put the gem on their heads. Back in Gen 5, we were given a gem of each type. When held by a Pokemon, that gem would boost a move with the corresponding type by 50% one time. Add in the bonus you get for using a move of one of your types, and this move was basically a Z move. And you know how much I despise Z moves. What's worse is there was no limit on how many gems you could have on a team. So you could theoretically use 4 in any given battle. This was clearly so overpowered, they had their boost nerfed down to 30% just one generation later and removed all of the gems aside from the normal gem. I honestly liked gems at the time, but there's no denying they were broken. Stuff like Fire Gem Eruption Heatran and Dragon Gem Draco Meteor Latios was just too unbalanced. Here's hoping Pokemon learn from their mistakes and these new gems are a bit more manageable. Number 53. Z-moves. We just talked about this. Wait, should these be lower on the list? Number 52. Sky Battles. The only way to have a Sky Battle is with flying type Pokemon? What if I toss my Pokemon in the air over and over? These battles are pretty innocuous, with their biggest offense being that they ruined the 3D models for flying Pokemon for years. Number 51, baby Pokemon. They're cute, but I agree with most fans about this one. What else is there to like about them? I'm not as upset that they took spots that could have been filled by better Pokemon, but couldn't they have at least added some sort of value to the game besides merchandising? Make a baby Dracovish, then we can talk. Hey, it's me, Wolf from the future. Just jumping in really quickly to let you know that there's actually a couple other Wolf channels that you might want to be watching. There's WolfeyVODs, where we post all the VODs from my streamed content, so if you miss a stream, you can watch it there. There's Short Wolfie for shorts, and there's Bonus Wolf, which is a secret new channel where I'm posting a lot of the content I used to make before we hired editors. The reception's been really positive, and so if you miss kind of my old classic unhinged style, I definitely recommend checking that one out. Anyway, back to the video. Number 50, Pokejobs. Unreal that this exists. Sending your Pokemon out to do contract work? How does this affect tax season? What's the insurance situation? Are there safety laws? The only reason this is higher than everything before it is because it's an extremely easy way to earn EVs, as long as you're willing to wait overnight for your Pokemon to come back. Speaking of EVs, vitamins are your fastest way to raise a competitive Pokemon. Each vitamin gives you 10 EVs in a specific stat. But what about when you need an EV total that isn't divisible by 10? Well, you have to go knock out a bunch of Pokemon or use feathers which give you 1 EV each. This and the fact that they're so dang expensive makes vitamins a blessing and a curse. Yes, they help you build a competitive team quickly, but the stress of buying the wrong one or the wrong amount and wasting your money, followed by the math you have to do to get the rest of your EVs the old-fashioned way, is just annoying. Number 48, friendship. I'll be honest, the idea of an in-game friendship value you can have with your Pokemon is kind of neat. What frustrates me is evolutions that require high friendship. Not only does this force you to grind, but it's a fake friendship. What happens when my evolution finds out its evolution was based on a lie? Number 47, the in-game clock. Starting in Generation 2, each Pokemon game has an internal clock running at all times. In some games, this dictates whether it's day or night, or when berries can grow back. And if you know me, you'll know that I hate waiting. Number 46, Team-wide Experience Share. This might be controversial, but I don't really have a problem with Experience Share when it's done right. X and Y did it wrong. Sword and Shield did it right. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, wrong. Legends Arceus, right. If we're not going to be able to turn it off, then the entire game needs to be built around it. X and Y were already too easy, even without Experience Share. And BDSP were one-for-one remakes of Diamond and Pearl, games that weren't built with a team-wide Experience Share in mind. Number 45, Poke-pelago. What is this? Animal Crossing? Number 44, berries. I actually like berries in competitive Pokemon. They're a fun consumable that adds a dimension to the game. In a playthrough though, they're basically worthless. You can buy items like full heal or potions to accomplish what they offer without needing to be prepared in advance. Also, berry farming sucks. Why? Well, you have to wait for the berries to grow. Also, Sword and Shield didn't even have a place you could grow your own berries. This is super annoying. And don't even get me started on the fact you have to water them. Number 43, SOS Battles. These are a type of battle introduced in Generation 7 where a Pokemon calls on another Pokemon for help. This is actually a pretty cool way to shiny hunt, EV train, or find a specific evolution that you normally can't find in the wild. The only problem is, it's never the one you want. It also makes a Sun and Moon playthrough take even longer than it already does. The only thing I like about SOS Battles is they made the boss battle totem Pokemon actually a challenge sometimes. Number 42, the Game Corner. When Pokemon sparked a gambling addiction in children across the world. Not only is this problematic, but the slot machines feel impossible. I don't think I've ever had the patience to play them enough to win the amount of coins needed for a prized Pokemon. I'd always just save my money to exchange for coins to then exchange for the Pokemon. The only redeeming quality about the Game Corner is the one in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which consisted of one game, Voltorb Flip, the most addicting game of all time. It actually took a lot of thinking and skill, and I'd often just play it for fun. Number 41, the Safari Zone. The Safari Zone also started in Gen 1, but saw several updates throughout the years. For one, the catching odds were actually fixed. The original Safari Zone had the options of throwing food, a Safari Ball, or a rock? The food and rock would change the odds of the Pokemon fleeing, but in Gen 1, funny enough, The best option is actually to just throw a Safari Ball. Ruby and Sapphire added Pokeblocks to make catching easier, but the system is surprisingly complex. Gen 4 ruined the Safari Zone altogether by drowning it in mud that you get stuck in every few steps in Diamond and Pearl, and the overly complicated build your own Safari in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. X and Y's Friend Safari was just the final straw. So it might have been ruined over time, but its original concept of catching exotic Pokemon without battling them was neat enough to get it this high. Speaking of neat concepts, today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Sponsors like Surfshark make it possible for me to spend so much time on my videos and keep them as high quality as I can. So I'm very grateful to them for sponsoring me. Surfshark keeps your online identity safe, encrypting all of the information sent between your device and the internet. They're basically a middleman between you and the rest of the internet, helping protect you from bad actors looking to steal your data. On top of that, Surfshark also allows you to change your virtual location to one of over 100 countries thanks to their over 3,200 servers around the world. This is especially useful if you want to access content that isn't available in the country you're in. Like, if you're on vacation and super invested in a series, but it isn't on Netflix wherever you are. Use my code Wolfey or the link in the description to get 83% off plus 3 extra months for free. Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. Number 40. Strong and Agile Style. Introduced in Legends Arceus, this new battle mechanic was interesting, but clearly not thought out enough. And you can tell Pokemon agrees by how few trainer battles there are during your playthrough. It was a nice try, but I'm fine if they never return. Number 39. Poke-miles. These were a currency introduced in Generation 6 that you accumulated by walking around the region, interacting with other players online, and through Street Pass. Street Pass was a 3DS feature that would notify you when you passed by someone who also had their 3DS with them. You could use Poke-miles on in-game items such as full heals, Ultra Balls, or even rare candies. But look at these prices. Talk about inflation, geez. Overall, Poke-miles are a harmless little gimmick some people might not even realize exists. Number 38. Inverse Battles. Head might hurts it, but dislike of, kind eye. Number 37. Triple Battles. After we got double battles, triple battles were inevitable. Every 12-year-old went nuts for these back in the day. They're fun in theory, but clunky in practice. Quadruple battles though, that's gonna be the one. Number 36, rotation battles. Rotation battles were just triple battles, but actually interesting. They're also one of the most ridiculous battle gimmicks Game Freak has ever tried to implement into the series. How does this even make sense in World? Do you have to battle on like rotating platforms? Number 35, Battle Royale. Did you know that Pokemon had a Battle Royale before Fortnite and PUBG even came out? Okay, maybe this is the most ridiculous battle gimmick, but at least with Battle Royale, we had the feeling this was a one-time thing. These were 4-person, every trainer for themselves battles that were almost amazing, save for one little thing. The battle ended as soon as a single trainer was out of Pokemon. Rather than being the last mon standing, it was a race to get KOs. This is like if Super Smash Bros. Didn't have stock battles and you were forced to play with time mode only. Number 34, Horde Encounters. Horde Encounters are only this high because of their value to shiny hunters and competitive players who needed to EV train. Otherwise, you better have a spread move on the first Pokemon in your party or you're gonna be here a long time. Number 33, Secret Bases. Secret bases were a fun little gimmick introduced in Generation 3. Gen 2 gave us the ability to decorate our bedrooms, but Ruby and Sapphire took it to a whole new level. If you were into The Sims or Animal Crossing, this was the perfect mechanic for you. Gen 4 kinda ruined it, but at least it came back with the Gen 3 remakes, only to swiftly be ruined again by Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Number 32, the Union Room. Gen 4 came out around a time when Wi-Fi was really only found in stores or at your rich friend's house. So being able to connect your DS to the internet was a serious luxury. I remember how awestruck I was entering the Union Room for the first time, surrounded by players around the world all willing to trade or battle. It was what Sword and Shield's online wild area should have been. Had BDSP not come out and shown me how lame this place actually was, this might have been higher, but alas. Number 31, the Underground. The third mechanic in a row to be tarnished by BDSP. The original Underground was a place where you could play capture the flag with your friends, dig for treasure, and make your own base. Back in 2006, this was the wildest thing ever. You can do all of this without a cable? Then, of course, the Grand Underground and BDSP had to remove the Capture the Flag minigame and give us a room to fill with what felt like pointless statues. The only redeeming factor was all the rare Pokemon you could find down here, and the fact that your shiny odds increase after finding enough Digletts. Number 30, the Versus Recorder. The Versus Recorder is one of the most important mechanics ever added for competitive Pokemon. Most matches at tournaments aren't on stream and end up lost forever with no way to watch them. With the Versus Recorder, players could save one battle from their tournament to show their friends later. And then they changed it so that the Versus Recorder wouldn't work for tournaments. Why? They added a new feature where you could battle against the teams from your recording, potentially revealing more information about your opponent's team. The Versus Recorder is in the middle of my list because if it actually worked properly, it would be huge for competitive Pokemon. But in its current state, it's just a wasted mechanic with enormous potential. Number 29, breeding. It can't be overstated how game-changing breeding was for the Pokemon series. This mechanic was probably created for trading purposes, but it's evolved way past that. Nowadays, breeding is also used for shiny hunting and building a competitive team. Using the Masuda method, shiny odds are significantly increased with hatching eggs. It also can be used to create a Pokemon with the exact IVs, nature, ability, and even moves that you want. Some moves can only be obtained via breeding. Even with how beneficial breeding is for competitive Pokemon, I still find the process way too tedious. Way too many components go into it. You need the correct items, high IVs on at least one of the parents, and then you still have to hatch all the eggs, which takes forever. Plus, I haven't even mentioned the ethical questions surrounding it all. So yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with breeding. Hey, just jumping in really quickly to let you know that I have some really good news about the channel. We've got a huge influx of people watching who are now subscribed, and so we've gone all the way up to 12% of people watching my videos are now subscribed. Yeah, I want to say thank you very much. And there's still a lot of you who are watching the content and not subscribed, so if you want to support me and help out the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, back to the video. Number 28, shiny Pokemon. I don't shiny hunt, but I understand its significance. There's a huge community of shiny hunters out there, and it's part of the reason Pokemon is as big as it is today. I'm personally fine with the odds decreasing over the years because it just makes it more accessible. Number 27, the Versus Seeker. Okay, I know, it's a strange thing that this is this high, but I am very susceptible to nostalgia. Back in Gen 3, we didn't have Wi-Fi, okay? There was no online ladder. Once you beat the game, you only had a limited number of things to do. We'll talk about the Battle Frontier later, but the Versus Seeker was also really important to me. It really came in handy when I wanted to relive my playthrough but didn't want to start a new file. It also really helped when I needed to grind but didn't want to fight wild Pokemon. I remember beating up the same rich kid over and over in Generation 4. Sorry, Trey. Number 26, Trials. Trials was a motorcycle game where you... What? Oh, Pokemon Trials. Right. Pokemon Trials were Gen 7's version of the Gym Challenge. Instead of light puzzle solving and battling through trainers, you'd solve light puzzles and battle? Is this right? Was it really not that different? Alright, well, the final battle was completely changed. Instead of a gym leader, you fought a totem Pokemon who not only had its stats raised, but could also call on other Pokemon to help it. This is actually really challenging sometimes, and I found myself losing to a few of them. It was a nice shakeup to a mechanic that was getting kind of stale, but I'm glad it stayed in Sun and Moon. Gym leaders might not be as difficult, but they add more personality and story to the games, which are seriously lacking in both departments. Number 25, Mega Evolution. Just watch the video, folks. Number 24, Soaring. Hasn't everyone always imagined how cool it would be to actually pilot your flying Pokemon around the region? Well, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire gave us just that. Well, kinda. Even though you could only fly around on Mega Latios or Latias, it was still an incredible feature to finally see implemented. Plus, the music was killer. Number 23, Mantine Surfing. It's like Soaring, but with a competitive angle, and you can use your points to get rare items. This is awesome. Number 22, Ride Pokemon. Okay, so the only reason this is above iconic mechanics like Mega Evolution and breeding is because I got rid of HMs, objectively the worst mechanic in the series. HMs are so bad, they didn't even make this list. Okay, actually, I just wasn't sure if they should be counted as a core mechanic or not. They've been there from the start, but we keep getting more and more of them. They went from losing 1 or 2 moves on a few of your Pokemon to needing an entire slot just for Bidoof, and even that wasn't enough. Ride Pokemon finally solved this issue, and we've been living good ever since. I mean, just look at us. Number 21, Following Pokemon. One of the most important themes in Pokemon is friendship. We're supposed to build relationships with our Pokemon. Following Pokemon makes this easier because you get to see your Pokemon in the same space as your character as opposed to in menus or battles. With such a cartoony art style, it can be a little difficult to fully immerse yourself within the game, but having your Pokemon follow you brings us a step closer. Well, when it's done right, I guess. Number 20, Super Training. As I've said, EV training can be extremely tiresome. Gen 6 tried to remedy this by turning it into a minigame. Finally, we could put an end to the awful way we used to EV train in favor of something less time-consuming and monotonous. Punching bags and battling giant Pokemon-shaped balloons. Of course, it still took a ton of time and could become repetitive, but it was nowhere near as bad as the run back and forth in tall grass routine. Unfortunately, Super Training didn't make it out of Gen 6. Number 19, Overworld Pokemon. Again, seeing the Pokemon interact in the same environment as your character is important to immersion. However, seeing wild Pokemon in the overworld is also super helpful when you're looking for something specific. It would be nice to see them have more than 2 animations though. Number 18, Max Raid Dens. You've heard me gush about these before. It's a huge step in the right direction for multiplayer. Being able to hunt for rare Pokemon with your friends is pretty cool, regardless of how repetitive it is. You always get some kind of reward for doing it, and I love that it helped keep Sword and Shield alive for its unprecedented 3-year run. Number 17, Dynamax Adventures. Again, great idea. It expands on max raid battling with your friends by implementing even more strategy and rewards. These would honestly be higher on the list if they just fixed a few things. Better NPCs would be nice. Looking at you, Martin. Number 16, Contests. Trust me, I know placing contests here is controversial. I have a lot of fond memories with contests in Generation 3, but its other iterations fluctuate greatly in quality. Super contests were good, but I hated making poffins. I'd end up just burning the poffin and wasting all my berries. The Pokeblock minigame was so much better. The Pokeathlon, on the other hand, was so good. And then Gen 5 happened. What even is this? Pokemon can sing and act? Thankfully, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire brought back the traditional contests. And BDSP, let's just move on. Number 15, the Pokemon World Tournament. I am in this one, baby. Number 14, Battle Tower, Battle Frontier, Trainer Tower, Battle Subway, Black Tower, White Tree Hollow, Battle Mansion, Battle Tree. These are all very dear to me, obviously. Emerald's Battle Frontier is the best, but a few of the others are close seconds. I mentioned earlier that I have strong feelings for the Battle Frontier because it was all you could do with the game once you beat it. I probably spent more hours in these battle gauntlets than I did anywhere else. Where do you think I picked up my knack for competitive Pokemon? Number 13. Hyper Training. The best thing Sun and Moon ever did was introduce Hyper Training. This mechanic allowed any level 100 Pokemon to gain a perfect IV stat in exchange for a bottle cap, a new type of currency. This saves so much time that would usually be spent breeding, and more importantly, made legendary Pokemon much more accessible. The only problem was, of course, the Pokemon had to be level 100. Fortunately, Sword and Shield's abundance of experience candy and rare candy made this way easier. There is still no way to bring a Pokemon's IV down to 0, so we're stuck soft resetting for that, but maybe one day. Number 12, Natures. With 25 different natures, there's a huge selection of builds to try out for each Pokemon. Okay, in reality, only about half of those are actually competitively viable. I mean, it's pretty rare that you would actually want to lower one of your defense stats. But still, having 12 different builds for every single Pokemon gives you so much freedom in how you use your Pokemon. Without natures, the only variation in stats between the same Pokemon would be where all their EVs went. And for a lot of Pokemon, that's already obvious. And natures add personality, which in turn add immersion. Number 11, Regional Variants. By Gen 6, it was clear that Game Freak wanted to pull back on how many new Pokemon they were adding to the series. Instead of the usual 100 plus, X and Y only added 72 new Pokemon, with Mega Evolutions filling in what would have been the rest of the Pokedex. Gen 7 added Z moves, but they still needed a way to keep the new Pokemon count down. Enter Regional Variants. A genius idea. It's a fantastic way to make a Pokemon feel new but familiar, without adding another evolution to the line. Some of them even get their own evolution now, and it totally makes sense in World. There's even legendary regional variants now. I don't completely understand how that works, but it's still really cool. These new designs are fantastic, and I love that, in a way, they can turn what was an average Pokemon into something greater, without having to retcon anything. Number 10. Speaking of legendary Pokemon, what's a better way to ring in the top 10? Legendaries are so great because of what they represent. Back in the day, they were always the coolest, rarest, and strongest Pokemon in the game. After Gen 1, the region's history and story always revolved around the legendaries. They were always there on the box art and main menu, just daring you to make them your pet. They're what a majority of the plot leads up to, with some games even forcing you to use them in the final battle. Their designs weren't always the best, and in hindsight, some of them were severely underpowered, but hey, they're still really cool. Number 9. Dynamax. Watch the video. Number 8. Weather. This is not a joke. When I talk about loving the weather in Pokemon, I don't mean that overworld weather effect, even though that can be pretty cool. I'm talking about its effect in battle. There are entire teams built around weather. Weather adds so much depth to competitive Pokemon because of how different types and abilities interact with it, and because there can only be one active at a time. Adding a duration to weather effects only increases the depth as well. I do wish hail was better competitively, but other than that, it's neat that the different weather effects all have their own unique place. Number 7. Terrain. Okay, so terrain had the tendency to get out of hand back in Gen 7, but nowadays, it's just a better version of weather. Each terrain has a different effect on your moves, and it's not just increasing their power or making them more accurate. Some terrains straight up nullify status effects or abilities. If you're worried your Dynamax Pokemon is about to be put to sleep, set up an electric terrain with max lightning and you just made your whole team invulnerable to it for 5 turns. And electric moves are stronger. Psychic terrain makes you immune to priority moves, so all those Pokemon with Prankster basically lose that ability. I will admit, terrain is only so high because of how well it synergizes with Dynamax, so once Scarlet and Violet come around, it'll probably drop significantly. It was fun while it lasted though. Number 6. Running shoes. Do I even have to explain this one? Number 5. I laughed when I put this one so high, but when you really think about it, held items are truly one of the greatest mechanics ever added to Pokemon. To the average player, held items are just one of those things you can do but rarely think about. You could probably play the entire game without a single Pokemon in your party holding an item, but in competitive Pokemon, they're mandatory. I didn't have the motivation to count every single one, but there are a lot of held items, and they're all different variables to think about when building a team. Do you want your Pokemon to hit harder or faster? Are you willing to lose HP every turn or be locked into a certain move? Do you just need to survive for one turn so you can set up that crucial Trick Room? They're so important in the metagame that some item slots are even taken away from certain Pokemon so they don't become overpowered. Zacian, for instance, needs to be holding its rusted sword to turn into its crown form. Otherwise, it's useless. Held items added so much depth to the series for casual and competitive players alike. Number 4. Abilities. Can you tell I like mechanics that widen the competitive pool of Pokemon to choose from? Anything that adds variation to building a team is cool. Without held items or natures or abilities, Pokemon would be a bit monotonous. These variables make the game healthier and more fun. Abilities are even better than these other mechanics because of the strategies they provide you with. Using a cool ability to execute your strategy feels like you're breaking the game. You might have heard me talk about this on my channel once before, but I once had a Gengar use roleplay on Delcatty's normalized ability so it could pass it to my opponent, making my Gengar and Haunter invulnerable to their attacks. It was so difficult, but so rewarding. I also love that abilities make each Pokemon feel unique. For example, there's lots of fire types, but not many fire types with Levitate. There are even abilities unique to certain Pokemon, which is such a cool way of making a Pokemon feel special. Number 3. Double battles. I mean, how could this not be up here? Double battles are the ideal way to play Pokemon. They add so much more strategy, and they're faster. Well, I should say they're the perfect way to play so far. My money's still on quadruple battles. Number 2. The physical special split. You might have come across this term before because it's essentially why we have the game we have today. Before Generation 4, whether a move was physical or special was determined by what type it was. Basically, all the evolution types were special, and if there's no evolution of it, it's a physical type. Not sure why Ghost was physical, but whatever. Having types be locked into physical or special was a terrible idea, because sometimes that would make a Pokemon's highest stat useless. Everyone always points to Gyarados as an example. Look at this thing. It's a monster. Its attack stat is 125. But it couldn't even utilize that before the split because water only drew from the special attack stat, and Gyarados' special attack is 60. So yeah, allowing any move of any type to be physical or special was a huge change to the series. Some might even say it's the most important change. But for me, that title belongs to something else. Number 1. The only Wi-Fi. It's wild to think that we didn't get this until we were 4 generations in. This mechanic is a huge help when it comes to training or building a team. Not all of us have the time or resources to do it ourselves. By resources, I mean friends. I have friends, but you know what I mean. Wi-Fi allows the community aspect of Pokemon to flourish. The very core of Pokemon is playing with other people, whether that's battling and trading with friends or with strangers online. Being able to connect with people all over the world is a huge part of what I love about Pokemon, and adding Wi-Fi capabilities to the game is what made this possible. And that's the list. Thank you to everyone who's watched or subscribed to my content. It started off with me doing Wi-Fi battles after all. I couldn't have gotten this far without you.